Transexual Transgender Transhumanism. Today I'm speaking with Jennifer Bilek on her book by that name. What has been sold to the public regarding transgenderism is a human rights campaign for equal rights among people born in the wrong bodies. Jennifer Bilek's fearless book exposes how the nefarious roots of our modern craze of transgenderism has a nefarious root behind it. It's an agenda to redefine the very meaning of humanity, to coup the means of human reproduction itself, while at the same time dehumanizing the sex of the human race that engages in reproduction. The ultimate goal of these technocrats and those obsessed with technocracy is to create a god, a world in which human beings merge with machines. Human reproduction is done by the state, citizens that are created and owned from cradle to grave by a technocratic dictatorship, and even into a post-human future. Jennifer Bilek has been researching and documenting this movement for over a decade, and she believes we're at the 11th hour. Quoting from her book, humanity is being blurred intentionally for a virtual construct, beings beyond our currently sexed borders. The gender industry is not the only arena where this blurring of reality is happening, but sex is foundational to our existence as a species, which makes it crucial for people to understand what is transpiring. We must get beyond our fear of talking about this industry in real terms, instead of the language and the market has set with its advertising slogan. Trans rights are human rights is a slogan that infers the commodities of artificial sex characteristics are people. They are not. Let's get into it. So, Jennifer, welcome. You are the author of 11thhourblog.com. Yes. And the book Transsexual, Transgender and Transhumanism. So I read your book, and from what I gathered is that you're a TERF.
You know, I hate that crap. I really do. I mean, I'm a person and I'm completely against this ideology, this destructive, cataclysmic, horrible ideology. So yes, I've been labeled a TERF.
One of the interesting things about how it got injected into our culture and how it just became an overpowering, I mean, you go through it a lot in your book for the NGOs, a lot of the foundations.
Oh, I do. Yes. This has really been an agenda, basically, of the elite class, and it has been sent through non-governmental organizations, and philanthropic billionaires are funding all of our institutions, medical institutions, the military, educational institutions, religious institutions, and they also have created these philanthropists that are using the LGBTQI now political apparatus to drive the narrative that this is somehow a human rights movement for minority, marginalized population that are suffering brutal attacks in the population. You know, it's been sent through the LGBTQI political apparatus by billionaires. Most of them are elite gay men, not all of them, but at the very pinnacle, at the top. And they have, in 2020, Tim Gill, who owns one of the two most powerful LGBTQI NGOs in the United States, called the Gill Foundation, invited, you know, this is now 2020, and gay marriage has been secured in the social stratosphere, right, legally. And so, and you have a lot of people, gay people, that are functioning in society very comfortably. So why do you need this mammoth LGBTQI NGO anymore? Same time, Arcus Foundation comes up, who it was founded by John Stryker, who is heir to Stryker Medical Corporation fortune. The Stryker Medical Corporation is in like 75 different countries. It's worth $133 billion the last I checked, but it does grow rapidly over the years. It's been growing rapidly. And they have actually worked together. He's also a gay man, John Stryker. And his, you know, mammoth LGBTQI NGO came up in 2020, also after gay marriage was secured in the culture. So they both basically started to create a new marketing opportunity.
That's completely what it was for, wasn't it? The medical industrial complex. They wanted to create a whole new market, and they can get that for all these, like, because if you take up these surgeries when you're like a teenager or whatever, you get castrated or double mastectomies, you're essentially a patient of big pharma for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the drugs and the surgeries themselves are highly, highly profitable. You also open up markets in sexual identity. As business rules, you have to open your markets if you want to progress in a system of corporatization. So now you have, and it's really hard to open your markets if you only have two sexes, right? You have lesbian, gay, bisexual, and you have heterosexuality, right? So what are you going to do now? Well, if you add T and gender identity, well, woo, now you have a great big new marketing constituency, people to market, stuff to. So you had gay bookstores and gay cruises and gay libraries and gay this and gay travel agencies and gay banks and gay lawyers and so now, and this constituency, this marketing constituency is now worth, anywhere from $4.7 trillion into $5 trillion. I mean, I don't even know how much money that is. That's just ridiculous. Like what is that? I mean, even $1 trillion, like what the hell is that? But supposedly, and that's the figure that's quoted by Out Leadership, which is the business networking arm of the LGBTQI political apparatus. And at this pinnacle, you don't have like grassroots activists like Harvey Milk, for instance. What you have are bankers. There's bankers up there. It's, I laugh because it's such, the whole gender identity and transgender narrative, it's just so patently ridiculous. And to think that all of these powerful people and these governments and the politicians, are denying sex reality and overhauling society for a minuscule part of the population who have body dysmorphia or a fetish or whatever it is, that they're suffering from, it's just so embarrassingly stupid. Do you know what I mean? And I have to laugh, but it's, it's not really funny. I mean, it would be more funny if it wasn't so deadly.
Yeah, I agree. It's been spread through as well because they've spread it through like a social contagion. I remember reading about the how anorexia came to like Hong Kong. That was pretty much unheard of in the 1990s with the arrival of American magazines or like European magazines like Cosmopolitan and that kind of thing. And they were discussing anorexia. Suddenly they had this massive bump up in anorexia in Hong Kong. And it's pretty much the exact same thing they've done. Although I think they've done it deliberately. I think there's a lot of social networks that is just criminal. Like Wall Street Journal did a big expose on like how Facebook and Instagram connects pedophiles together and stuff like that. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Tumblr, but I think a lot of it was coming out of Tumblr in the 2010s, that kind of thing.
Well, it's definitely, people call it a social contagion. I think of it more like a cult because the social contagion is really a phenomenon. Not quite sure where it comes from. I am absolutely certain where this comes from because I've been researching the money for over a decade. And these people are literally driving this into the culture and driving children to dissociate from their sexed reality. And the impetus behind this is the technological reproduction market. It's a grooming process to prepare the next generation for the advancements in the tech reproduction sector, which are really so much more extreme than what people actually realize. Like now they're researching, like the holy grail of artificial reproduction is in the holy grail of research in artificial reproduction is creating gametes in a lab in a dish from skin cells. And so, at first glance, the idea that you've tied this fetish of adult men, transsexualism, autogynephilia, rebranded to transgender for the youth, tying this to a movement for people who are same-sex attracted seems just insane. And a lot of lesbian, gays, and bisexuals are totally against this, and they see this as like a new conversion process. Like taking kids that would normally grow up to be gay and, starting them on this pathway of a lifelong medicalization and sterilizing them so that they will need reproductive technologies. But that's exactly what's going on here. And so it's not, when you look at the business aspect of it, there's very much an incentive to tie this ideology to lesbian, gays, and bisexuals because they need reproductive technologies if they're going to have their own biological children, especially gay men.
Yeah, you mentioned how California's passed a law for gay men for the rights to women's wombs. And that seems to be the direction they're kind of going, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And guess who's footing the bill for that? Taxpayers. We are, along with these, horrific surgeries that they're doing on children. I don't even want to call them surgeries. It's like, it's mutilation of healthy reproductive systems for identity. I mean, we have really lost the plot here as human beings, letting this go forward. But, this speaks to, why I call this a cult, because people are allowing this to happen. They're so dissociated themselves from their own reality already by technology that they are allowing this to go down on their watch. Not only allowing, they're promoting it, they're celebrating it, they're out in the streets, rah, 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 fighting for it, fighting for children to be lifelong medical patients.
Never seen anything so shocking. You tie it a lot to capitalism, so I take it you're on the left of the political spectrum, because I consider myself of the left, but I think at this point the left has been so psyoped and brainwashed. There's not been any pushback really from the left against this mutilation of children. And I think in the future generations, they're going to look at what we've done during this period, and they're going to be like, you let children sterilize themselves and get them hooked on what they thought was like a revolutionary ideology, that kind of thing.
Oh, you're very optimistic, thinking that there's going to be a future. I mean,
your blog is the 11th hour after all, so
I mean, yes, we are in the 11th hour. We really are. I mean, they're coming for us. They've already taken our land, they've taken our clean water. They want our money, our land, our water, our food, and now they're coming for us. Our interior, not just, women used to have been exploited through the ages for their sex, right? But this is a whole new ball field. This is not just exploitation. This is colonization, physical colonization of their reproductive systems. And the intention is to usurp that with technology eventually.
I don't know if you've been keeping up with the genetics and science and that kind of thing, but the whole Mendelian gene theory has collapsed in the last 15 years, where the organism genes can be turned off, they can be influenced by RNA and DNA, they can be influenced by the organism itself. So how sure are you that they'll get to complete full reproduction of human life, like in those little bubble things that advert was out for a while back?
I don't really think about that much. Is it possible? Will they get there? Because where they are already is so horrific that I just consider stopping this, and doing all of my, everything in my power to stop this, to stop the escalation of this, and to start, we have to start implementing an ethics around technological developments. When you sow these incredible advancements like this to a unfettered market, you're in hell. You're out in absolute hell. Because once you put it into the marketplace, I mean, you can get this out of the law, you can get it out of the institutions, but once you put this into the market, it takes off on its own accord. How do you stop that, draw it back and say, oh, we need to implement ethics around this now, Yeah. I mean, there aren't that many, organizations really looking at this critically, these developments.
What do you think about Trump's move to reestablish some normality?
Well, on its face, it's brilliant. I mean, I couldn't be happier. I'm like, dancing in the streets over here. I mean, it's like almost as strange as the past 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like so surreal. It's like, wow, and I think people are very, very hopeful. I think that they shouldn't invest in that hope too much, because Trump is beholden to and funded by the big tech gurus. I mean, and look, he's standing right next to Elon Musk, right, in all his presentations. Now, I want to say, just to be clear, that I discuss my work in terms of transsexualism, transhumanism, and transgenderism being, a conglomerate of systems that are working to undermine biological reality. and overlay a technological reality on the natural world, right? But this is really transsexualism, transgender, transhuman. I'm dealing with the reproductive front of that system. Yeah, but transhumanism on the whole is a very, very, very broad topic. And, not all transhumanists are completely insane. And there are transhumanist developments, certainly, that are not completely insane. Like you have artificial limbs that, can understand the signals that it is sent, and then it can feed back its own signals to the arm so that it can move. So that's pretty fascinating. Um, yeah, I don't really go into that realm, but I think it's worth people's investigating, the whole broad picture, so it will help them understand the aspect that I'm dealing with. And there is no person better for that than Joe Allen, who's written Dark Aeon. He's works with Steve Bannon over at the War Room, and he's the book is just phenomenal, and it's a really easy read because he's very funny, and he's also made it very accessible, a topic that's not always accessible to people that are not in the tech field. He's made it very accessible for everybody. So yeah, it's worth investigating the whole transhumanist element on the whole. But yeah, I'm really uh, working on the whole reproductive front, and that's what the gender industry is. It's deconstructing the human sex binary, ideologically, legally, socially, and in material reality.
The biggest pushback seems to have come from the right to this, because they usually tend to be Christian and believe in God, that kind of thing. And it seems that they have some grounding in reality because of that. There hasn't been as much pushback on the left, as they seem to think this is the new fad that's come along that they have to get on board with. But a lot of them have ditched it recently. I saw AOC had removed their pronouns from her Twitter page.
Oh my God, that's great. He's such a lunatic.
So
I think that a lot of Shakespeare said all the world is a stage. So I really think a lot of this is positioning and theatrics. Do you know what I mean? I mean, Thiel is another one. Peter Thiel is another gay male that's very, very attached to Trump. I don't know if he's funding him. I think he probably is, but he certainly has relationships to the other men that are. And he's on the right, the political right. And he's already developed like transhumanist games, like sports games for people that are augmented, like either surgically or through drugs. And he's had many, many investors in this company that he's created. Yeah, so it's everywhere. It's everywhere you go. So yeah, I don't think that. And also, I mean, I think there's many, many people on the right that are fighting this, but they don't really know what they're fighting. They think they're fighting, this crazy phenomenon, this medical scandal, which, on some level, it certainly is a medical scandal, but that's not what it is in totality. It's much, much broader than that. And I don't think most of them have any idea. I don't think most people have any idea what this is.
exactly.
I mean, I've been staring at it with a microphone for like over 10 years, going to every little nook and crevice, and then spanning out to look at the whole broad picture, and so I have a pretty clear picture of like what's going on here.
Is the transgender and transhumanism is intimately tied in with eugenics, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, transhumanism is really just another fancy name for eugenics, engineering, you know, human development, forced evolution of our species, and messing around with people's reproductive systems to advance your agenda is certainly a eugenics project. Plus the people that are getting caught in the maw of this horror is are vulnerable kids. Certainly women's rights are absolutely vital and they're being attacked, but children are being destroyed. Their physical bodies are being destroyed. They're even beyond that, their minds are just being decimated. by this cult indoctrination that they can transcend their physical reality through technology.
We're kind of at the period where a lot of people have been on these drugs for the last 10 years or whatever. And you're now getting a lot of trans regret people coming out. It's horrific what they describe. They've been like castrated. There's one particular fella I watched recently in preparation for this interview called Richie Herron. And he got himself castrated. He does like an hour-long interview explaining it. And they've done... The trans movement in general has done quite a lot to make it look like it is a gender dysphoria, like a dissociation with their body. But it's intimately interlinked with autogynephilia. And this fellow was talking and he was saying, I wish I could take it back, but this is what's happened. I'm a castrated male now. And then he was talking about, and then when I tried to explain that it was tied with autogynephilia, everyone just shunned me.
My heart goes out to Richie, really. I'm familiar with his work on this front. I'm
like, what have I done? What have I done? Why have I done this? This isn't just went bad. This has gone catastrophically wrong, and I'm a freak now. The only sensation I have is like deep pain. I kept having this phrase thrown at us, like, you're an ideal candidate for gender reassignment surgery. There was just like this desperate push to get us down this surgery.
And that was the last time you saw your own genitalia again, in male genitalia?
Yeah, it was probably the day before. I was going, what the f*** doing? I think.
The day before?
Yeah.
You said, what are you doing to yourself?
Yeah. I regretted it pretty much instantly. I just kind of looked like an animal had bitten at the area.
Was there a sexual element for you?
Oh yeah, I would say so, definitely.
That it was arousing to, and I say that with no accusation.
It was more to be, it's very hard to put in, it wasn't from the clothes or the body. I think it was more like there was like a fantasy in my brain that was like validating, should we say, but I think it was a sexual element to it, and I think it's a lie to suggest otherwise. Even the apparent same-sex attracted ones, I'm sorry, but there is a sexual element in this.
Transsexualism was invited into the LGB, because, along with TQI, blah, 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 because the fetish of autogynephilia, the paraphilia, deconstructs womanhood into commodities, yeah? So this is why it's invited into the LGB, because it substantiates the deconstruction of women into commodities to be sold on the market along with their babies, through surrogacy. And in order to justify inviting a male fetish into the LGB, they had to get children on board for this. So this was, they started the construction of the transgender child, rebrand transsexualism to transgenderism. Kind of cute little name, right? Especially for the youth. You can change your gender. How fun. Yeah. And so, of course, then there was the transgender child, suffering from terrible body dysphoria, and so this ideology was injected into the American Psychological Association. ARCAS was a big part of that, ARCAS Foundation by John Stryker.
The world stands on the precipice of catastrophe. From the ashes of crumbling empires, new tensions rise. In Ukraine, the flames of imperialist proxy wars burn hotter. In Palestine, decades of colonial oppression erupt into resistance and brutal reprisals. Across Asia, the spectre of great power rivalry looms as the US and its allies encircle China, desperate to maintain their waning hegemony. Behind it all, the contradictions of capitalism drive the chaos. The ruling class, desperate to maintain power, sows division and war to distract from their failures. Exploited workers displaced by continued wars, coups, colour revolutions and manufactured economic crisis are pitted against each other, while the rich grow richer off the spoils of the conflict. But the people are waking up. From the picket lines to the barricades, the oppressed are uniting. The path to peace lies not in the hands of warmongers, but in the collective struggle of the working class. Only by dismantling the systems of exploitation and imperialism can we avert disaster and build a world free from war. The choice is ours, solidarity or annihilation. The time to act is now.
And they developed this whole ideology of gender. And so then children got into the mix to substantiate this horror show. And so then it was just a relentless push, into the media by other organizations funded by these big kahunas, the LGBTQI, which are, attached to the medical tech sectors. Gil comes out of Quark, software, computer, and computing, and then he's in artificial intelligence. And you see this all at the top of at the pinnacle of the LGBTQI infrastructure. You see all these people involved in AI and technology and medical biotechnologies and the medical industry. Yeah. So, so they constructed this, they manufactured this construct, this illusion of the transgender child. Somehow it eluded us throughout history, except for the past, 10, 12 years, right? All of a sudden they're falling out of the trees, these transgender children who are going to commit mass suicide if we don't, attack their physical reproductive systems. Yeah. Very, very strange.
Their propaganda arm is phenomenal, though. The way that they've managed to work it into the culture, and
they're giving Edward Bernays, who's safely ensconced in his grave, chills. I'm telling you,
yeah, this is some very Dr. Mengele stuff, isn't it?
And the thing is that it's so huge at this point. This is why I say, I wouldn't get too hopeful about Trump. You know what I mean? I mean, at the face of things, it's very, very good, and I'm not going to diss it. You know what I mean? I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm very, very happy. And I think it's a good jumping off point. But this is really not the end. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, I think
to understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I think they took 10 steps forward in the 2010s up to now, and now they're taking one step back for Trump, and then whatever liberal gets in next, they'll just carry on down the transhumanist path.
God, I don't know. I don't know if the Democrats are even electable anymore. They're so insane. And this is coming from somebody who said, you asked me earlier if I was of the left. Yes, I was initially of the left, but the left has really turned into the right and gone way off the rails of the right.
Yeah, they support
and
the FBI.
Right turned into the left.
Yeah, yeah. They support FBI. They support censorship. They support so a lot of the funding comes from all these different NGOs, isn't there? You mentioned the Arcus Foundation. There's also the Open Society Foundation that's doing this. The Ford Foundation. You think of any others off the top of your head?
Oh, the Bonnet Foundation. David Bonnet. Another gay man, started a sexuality center, LGBT NGO. Yeah. Mark S. Bonham up in Canada. There's ARC also up in Canada. There's a bazillion all over the world. And not only that, there's now these transgender organizations all over the world fighting for the right of, people to disown their sex reality, be embraced by the rest of society and have society overhauled for them. Yeah. They're all over the place. There's one in Europe. I think it's called Transgender Europe. Actually, it's got like 2,500 members. In all these different countries, and they don't actually reach out and help people who are dissociated from their bodies, from their sex realities. They don't help those people. Well, what this money helps is to normalize this, is to bring legal structure to this dissociation from sex reality, which is really dissociation from reality, because sex, honey, is where we are rooted in the entire biosphere. Yeah,
absolutely.
Regeneration, death. It's all sex and death, at the end of the day. So when you let this tether go, this tether to our biological reality, this is the last one. This is the last straw. You already can't support yourself as an animal, most people, in the forest for like even a few days without starving to death, right? So and you don't know where your food comes from, and you probably don't want to know, because if you wanted to know, if you knew, you probably wouldn't want to eat it, right? And you definitely don't want to know what's in your water. Yeah, so we're already way dissociated. If we weren't, this wouldn't be able to this wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be able to happen because we wouldn't be so vulnerable to it. But we're already so dissociated that this is really taken hold, and it's the last tether. It's the last tether before the techno machine just has us complete.
Absolutely. And you've described the corporate state enforcing this via the environmental, social and governance scores, which is tied to BlackRock and all these large investment firms.
Well, yes. I mean, this is transhumanist reproduction here underway. and it's the future. The future of human reproduction is technological, and so everybody's on board for these new innovations. It's so exciting. You can imagine women will be liberated from birth. Men too. Women can work all the time. Men too. You won't have to worry about taking time off to, have your babies, to gestate the life. You can just go back to work immediately. Yeah.
I think that's a special kind of hell, because we're essentially going to have a capitalist state owning people's bodies from cradle to grave. They're no longer even going to have the protection of a family or extended family. They're just going to be owned by the state and sent to work.
Exactly. I have to laugh at, there's people all over social media and elsewhere in society running on about communism and Marxism, and their this whole like Red Scare. Oh my God, people in communism is trying to destroy the family, and it's like, well, what do you think's going on here exactly? This isn't communism. This is brutal, blood red vulture capitalism like we've never seen before. I don't even know if there's any society that's not impacted by, I think it was C.J. Hopkins that called globo capitalism. I think that's an appropriate term because you can't escape this even if you're in China. You're worried about China. Take a look in your backyard.
Even Russia, they managed to put through laws banning propaganda for LGBT at the moment, which is a pretty positive step in my view.
And I don't want to sound like some raging homophobe. I mean, it really is, same-sex attraction is not really the issue here. Same-sex attraction is it's a desire. It's not an identity. Now, but once you make this into an identity, and then now you corporatize that identity, now this is where your problems begin. Because now they want to put this gay identity on par with the way that we reproduce the species, heterosexuality, right? It's the same. It's equal. We're equal. Equal rights, right? But, you're not equal because you don't reproduce the species. People that are heterosexual reproduce the species. So, and then now we're being subjugated. People that are heterosexual are being subjugated to this creed. It's getting very, very powerful. Like, again, if it's 4.7 trillion or in the 5 trillions, like, who cares at that point? This is a juggernaut of capital power. And, they've created this whole infrastructure of scoring, which is probably why the whole DEI scoring and the human rights campaign scoring, corporate scoring, health scoring, is for, organizing other entities to take on this ideology. And if you don't, you're basically financially screwed, because we're going to take our constituency, our marketing constituency away from you. They're going to visit other people who are doing the whole LGBTQI hustle. So that's where, people look at this and go, oh, that's like China. There's a social credit scoring system, well, guess what, this is American style social scoring. Yeah,
it's definitely coming here.
So that's a pretty powerful network of financial threat. If you try to step out of, like, in 2014, like from 2014 to 2017, anytime anybody went out of the line, like, I remember this kid, it was a young woman who was in school and she wanted to use the boys' bathroom, and this turned into a mammoth lawsuit against the schools and against the state. I think it was North Carolina maybe. And all the tech companies get on board and they sign an amicus brief and they say, if you don't put these laws through, we're pulling all of our money, our trillions of dollars of money, out of your state. So that's a lot of threat, for an entire state.
They can do that.
Actually,
it's similar to Walmart unionization, isn't it? Whenever Walmart unionizes, they pull it out of the state and stick it in another one. With the highly globalized and kind of cosmopolitan world we live in now, they can just strip industry out of a country that disagrees with anything they're attempting to do.
It's pretty grim. Yeah, it's pretty grim. But, the plus is that, now that the mainstream media is collapsing in on itself because of their lies and their stupidity, and, oddly enough, ironically enough, because of the internet, there's lots of other platforms coming up, independent platforms and independent media coming up that have nothing to do with this crap. And there are activists that are fully aware of what's going on that are developing very, very creative ways of pushing back. Robbie Starbuck, who I've only seen on social media, but he's got this whole thing going where he goes to corporations and he basically says, if you don't pull out your DEI, crap, I'm going to expose you to the public, And he's doing this at a time when it's very, very unpopular. It's becoming very, very, very unpopular to force people, into these political positions. And
how
he's
is he
having quite a bit of
exposing
success.
The corporations?
Well, he tells them he's going to write them up. I don't know exactly what
Right.
else he's doing, but he's going to write them up and expose them. And he's on the political right. And so I'm not exactly sure how it works, but he's getting all these companies to just get rid of their DEIs. It's like amazing. It's like, wow. And then there's another one. And next week there's another one. And it's like, wow, this is very cool.
Excellent.
So I think there's a lot of things that can be done, and people are just starting to do that now. I'm not without hope entirely, but, I also know that we, as Americans especially, and I live in this bubble, in the American bubble, we're like entertained to death. We're like in this catatonic state all the time. We're walking around in this because we're so entertained, and we want to be entertained all the time. So we're like little addicts running around, and we don't see clearly, and we don't see beyond our borders, to other cultures and what they do and how they're experiencing things. People, other cultures mimic us. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the American empire collapsing, like at the moment, but I still see their soft power as a force of like a tsunami. Their soft power is absolutely incredible. They can infiltrate even countries like Iran. Obviously, the Iranians support the Palestinians, and I saw a video of one of the Iranian politicians shouting about why are they supporting the Americans with their fires when they've been bombing Gaza for the last year. Even in Iran, they seem to have a fifth column of liberals that are willing to hand the state over to the United States. I've been investigating the trans stuff, not as long as yourself, but for a while, and I've tied it into a lot of depopulation stuff. In 1974, Kissinger released the National Security Memorandum 200, and in it outlined that basically they had to keep the population of the world, they had to depopulate the world, because American business investments would become vulnerable to growing populations under foreign government. So basically, the puppet states that America props up around the world would collapse if they had growing populations.
I'm not really clear on that end, because there's a lot of statistics that say, there's a real fall in birth rate, and the technological reproduction market, I think, extends the potentiality for giving birth for women, all women, into past their prime, of pregnancy prime. So I think there's an impetus towards that. And I think also these technologies, they're going to be afforded to the elites, not to the underclass. And in fact, the underclass are going to be the women that are used as slaves. I mean, this we're looking at is slavery here, I mean, that's why you see women being, called birthing bodies and cervix havers and menstruators and stuff like that. That's a dehumanization process. And coming from feminist analysis and campaigning for women's rights and being very deeply entrenched in feminist analysis when I was a young person, I can see that a lot of the women feminists that are fighting this are fighting this because they think this is some sort of free-floating misogyny and patriarchal rule. I don't see it like that. I can see how they see it like that, but I don't see it quite like that. This is industry, and industry. To grow under capitalism, you need a slave class, and to open your markets, well, you need this slave class, right? And all the money gets sucked upwards in this process, and so it's industry, really, and if the product is alive and breathing, then you have to dehumanize it. So dehumanize them so that you can exploit them. Yeah, like the crazy wild American Indians. They had to be wild beasts, and black people that you brought over here had to be horrible people and disgusting creatures, right? In order to exploit them. Well, now we have the epitome of exploiting and colonizing women's reproductive capacities. So you have to dehumanize them in order for that extraction process to go down well for the rest of the public. So Yeah, that's how we get up. That's how we wind up with TERF.
Because autogynephilia is basically based in misogyny, isn't it? It's kind of a self-internalized wanting to be misogynist to the self. It's embedded. It's got such a narcissism to it that is quite impressive. I got one author here, like a trans author from 2019, Andrea Long Chu. She described when asked to describe a female, she basically that's right. Yeah, he said the barest essentials of femaleness are an open mouth and expectant blank eyes. Yeah, so that's what they view women as, just a hole and submission, basically. In England, there was some protests against some feminists that were trying to talk and that kind of thing. And they set up like a tent marquee thing, and they had a sign saying, "TERFs can suck my girl cock." I mean, how misogynist can you get from that point of view?
Well, I can't say that there isn't a lot of woman hatred, floating around in the culture, that presents itself in a way that's sexual, sexually degrading. And that is certainly influenced by the whole porn industry, which is, billions and billions huge, and being ingested by, 8-year-old boys to old men on the daily. And it really changes your brain structure. So you dump this identity into the culture where every, Tom, Dick, and Harry that's got a mental issue can jump in and go, "Oh, I'm a woman too." Why wouldn't they? I mean...
During the COVID-19 event, many people lost their lives due to involuntary euthanasia. They were plied with MIdazalom and Morphine or starved to death on the rail tracks of the Liverpool Care pathway. My name is Richie Brown, and I'm going to make a documentary documenting those who have been affected by involuntary euthanasia during this period. I will seek to give a voice to those who have been kept silent. These stories matter, and their lives matter. But we need your help to make the project possible. This documentary will follow the personal testimonies of those impacted by involuntary euthanasia during the pandemic, exploring the heartbreaking choices they never had the chance to make. Your contribution will help us fund the research, travel, interviews, and production needed to share these powerful stories across the world. With your support, we can bring these stories to light, help us honour the memories of those who were taken too soon, and give a voice to the many who suffered in silence. Your donation, no matter the size, will ensure those stories are heard. Join us in making this documentary a reality. Together we can bring justice, healing, and understanding. It's a bizarre state of the world, I've got to tell you.
Yes, it really is, But at core, it's industry. The porn industry really, really helps that along. There's a woman, Genevieve Gluck, who formed Redux magazine, and she does a lot of reporting on this absolute madness of the porn industry and how it's creating these crazy men, that are calling themselves transgender. They're just sexual predators, and they're all over, and they're just proliferating wildly, because of the internet and because they have access to each other and because their fetishistic brothers are being promoted into positions of power by the LGBTQI political apparatus. There's the Victory Institute that handpicks people from universities that are calling themselves lesbian, gays, bisexuals, and transgender, educating them on how to drive policy, through politics. So they train them to be in politics and how to do that effectively and to pass legislation for this ideology. So that's going on as well. But there, and now we've seen a lot of crazy porn-addled men, dancing around for their cameras on Twitter and X, or it's X now. But now we've also seen the birth of the reasonable transsexual. He knows he's a man. He doesn't care about using women's bathrooms, or he does, but he just feels the absolute need to mime womanhood through investiture and paying for simulacrums of women's biology to wear around and parade around in the culture. Yeah, so he's okay. Right, he's the good transsexual. He's only wearing women as a costume. He's not entering their spaces. He's only reducing her to commodities. He's not. And he's being put into positions of power because this fetish deconstructs womanhood.
How are you finding censorship?
Well, I'm not powerful enough to be really censored. Do you know what I mean? I'm more or less shadow banned. So
yeah, same.
And the big podcasters won't touch me with a 10-foot pole, probably because of their pharma and medical advertisers. But I just keep plodding along. I mean, I have been censored, of course. I was, when I first started out, and I wasn't really, really super clear about what was going on, but I kind of knew that I was like on the right path. I tried to get into the Left Forum in New York City where I live, and it's a big platform for everybody on the left can talk about anything they want to about the left side of politics, and it goes on for like 3 days. It's like a marathon. And I had been in it before, speaking about the environment and stuff, and so I thought, oh, I'm kind of onto something here, I think, but let me just put it out there in a conference and then see how people respond to it. Well, they initially gave me the spot, and then it was probably a few days before the trans activists got wind of it, because I just gave an absolute description of what I was going to talk about, the money behind transgender politics, right? And that was foolish of me. But anyway, so they cut my conference, and one of the people that was going to be at the conference was going to speak. She wrote it up for, I think, the Federalist. She wrote about it for the Federalist. So that was like way back in, I think, like 2016 maybe. And I've been published on the right before, so it's not like the right is, I mean, there really are genuinely good people on the right, and they will publish this stuff, and they hate it. However, the right media factions are just the same as the left media factions, that they're controlled by conglomerates. It's not like individual little platforms owned by individual little people. They're a part of the conglomerate. So, and when you look at the conglomerate, like you look at Condé Nast or Disney, the conglomerates, right? And then you look at all their platforms, you see that all of their platforms have the same exact message going out at the exact same time, with very little variation. So, I can write about gender ideology being poison in the media on the right, but I can't denounce transgender people as being an absolute fiction. I have to talk about it within the narrative of there being transgender people. Do you know what I mean? There's no transgender people. This is an absolute corporate myth, the whole lot of it.
Absolutely.
It's a mirage. It's a mirage, right? And everybody is so invested in it that it becomes a virtual reality. Now most of people think that there really are transgender people, right? And so this is how you form a virtual reality, right? You have a cult so big and without borders, no structure. It's not over this little place over here like Scientology and their little base, right? No, this is a cult without borders, right? So it's growing, growing, growing. And so this is how you form a virtual reality. And if you look at the roots of the technological development of this cult ideology, gender ideology, you see that the William Sims Bainbridge, who was the head of the National Science Foundation, which funds like most of the research in the United States, he was the head of the Human Cyborg program, at the government level, and he influenced Martine Rothblatt, who actually wrote the first gender bill. He's a lawyer, he's a tech entrepreneur, he calls himself transgender and transhuman, walks around with simulacrums of women's biology, worked on the human genome at the UN level, created satellite radio, so that whole surveillance system that's, Big Brother, the eye on us. And thank you, Martin Rothblatt, actually. He's developed a robot of his wife, Martine, and he believes that AI is just human without skin. He was very, very influenced by William Sims Bainbridge, who was very, very into cults and alternate realities, virtual realities. And Rothblatt himself has written about virtual realities and the future of baby making through technology. And he's also written the book of the gender ideology. He's written the blueprint for it, really. He calls it from transgender to transhuman. And he believes that separating the sexes by male and female is tantamount to South African apartheid. Yeah, so he's quite a character, and he's very, very well renowned in the technology fields and the biopharmaceutical fields. He's been in Hollywood with his robot wife, so he's in all the different areas of this, and all throughout the culture. And because he's been profoundly successful at his endeavors, he's very, very well respected. So they think anything that comes out of his mouth is like unicorn dust, And he hangs out as the Out Leadership, business networking arm of the LGBT, also LGBTQI now, I guess it is, plus. Yeah, I mean, I could just ramble on for days about,
Mm.
about him. He's got a xenotransplantation farm. He was the head of a biopharmaceutical corporation. He also has a 3D organ printing plant. Um, Worked for NASA. He has a cult religion called Terrorism, which is a technological religion, believes that we are building God with technology. Yeah, you got to know Martin Rothblatt if you want to know anything about the gender industry. He wrote
Yeah,
the book, literally.
that's incredible. Yeah, a lot of these people seem to want to replace God with what they think to be like AI and data mining. Like Euro Harari is on the same thing. You
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
about free speech and Amazon. How Amazon is simultaneously taking off books that are critical of gender ideology, whilst at the same time funding billions into medical research.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is tech pharma's baby here. So if you're gonna mess with that, write books about it. They want to, they were initially taking, people off their platform. Now my book's been up there for a while. Knock on wood, it hasn't, been taken down yet. But other books have. Abigail Shrier's book on how this impacted young girls, this cult. Um, I forgot the name of the book now, but that was taken down initially. She got it put back up. There was another guy that wrote When Harry Was Sally. Ryan Anderson, I think his name is, had his book taken off. And then there's another guy, Howard. I think his last name is Howard, and he wrote the Transgender Industrial Complex, I think it's called. And I mean, that's quite a tune. I mean, it's a little dry and it's incredibly anti-Semitic. But if you can wade through that, which is difficult, there is an incredible amount of information in there about the funding. I mean, it's so huge. I mean, he really covers like almost the entire network. It's crazy. It's like this big too. It's yeah. So his book was taken down and then put back up as well. So they mess with you and they mess with the algorithms, just like all the other platforms. I mean, Elon's supposed to be the great, hero of free speech, but my stuff is still, shadow banned over there. And,
Yeah, but
I had an interview I did that went on to have 1 million views before they started messing with the algorithm, and now it just doesn't move, I mean, it moves because I share it, but other than that, it doesn't move on the platform. Do you know what I mean? With the algorithm.
absolutely. Yeah, I went back onto Twitter after Elon came on because he was all talking about free speech, and I was wondering how long that would last. But if you go onto the shadow ban site and put my name in, it doesn't even come up with my name. It says the user doesn't even exist.
Well,
Like
I don't suppose
normally it
you'll be
would
doing
say
any better after
that you're
interviewing me.
deboosted or you're shadow banned or you're slightly ghosted or something. It doesn't even. It says my name doesn't exist. Yeah, so that's that. So what inspired you to write the book? If readers read it, what would you hope they'll take away from it?
My great hope for my book is that, for God's sakes, we're going to change the conversation here. Because if we're going to start talking about stereotypes, sex role stereotypes, blah, 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 for the next, generation, I mean, or the next decade, I can't, I can't do it. So I was forced to really write this book. I mean, I was forced to put, my my Substack and my blog on, into a book format so that people could get the information and start changing the damn conversation. It's just ridiculous. It's boring. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. This has nothing to do with sex role stereotypes, really. Ultimately, this is garbage that they're selling you. Gender dysphoria.
Absolutely.
I can't. You're killing me. Like you're cutting off my air. I can't. I can't take the stupidity, so that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same. It's a ridiculous conversation, but the amount of times I come into the conversation and yeah, I have to bite my tongue or go on a rant about it.
And this is why, men are really not getting involved in this conversation. Like a lot of, high-powered men with the big podcasts and stuff, they're not really engaging here. First of all, they don't want to decimate their base, but they don't want to go here because they don't really get it. Like what? Sex role stereotypes, I don't know. So what's the matter with transgender people? It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah. I mean,
they start to touch on, oh, the kids, you're going after the kids. Well, this is bad. Then it becomes a medical scandal, right? You're willing to talk about and tackle the medical scandal aspect of it, but you don't go wide. You don't go wide. Like, let's bring the whole picture in here, or the root at least.
Yeah, it's gone absolutely quite crazy. There's a video of some teachers I put on my Diplomatic Post site a while back, and it's in an Irish school, and they're discussing what's being taught, what they're having to teach, and what they basically went through to as like a teacher training for LGBT stuff. And you could tell most of them are kind of like modern liberals, kind of atheistic, that kind of thing. But they all came out of it saying that it was literally satanic. They were like, we were having to look at like different dolls and stuff with genitals cut off and new genitals put on and that kind of thing.
And what other topics on the DCU course, in addition to masturbation, porn, and sculpting sexual genitalia? Was there any other? On our last day, we had E.J. Reynolds from Wales come visit us on campus. And E.J. Reynolds, along with Esther McGeaney, were discussing how children could actually convey relationships and sexuality through artwork. And you see, with SPHE, there's going to be an assessment. It's called a classroom-based assessment. And they were just looking at opportunities whereby, looking at ideas as to how people could present the CBA assessments. So we got to see a video of work that was done in Wales. Oh my God, the room just went so quiet. Because what we actually saw was actually just, to me, it was just horrendous. Tell us what you saw. It was actually satanic, if I can use that word. There was actually pictures of somebody's artwork whereby there was this scissors image just about to cut the top of a clay penis. And that clay penis was modelled out. There was another instance of where there was a young girl, I'd say no more than 7 or 8, that actually had a mask on her, and she was placing another mask with horns up on the wall. And I just felt this was very subhuman. I think there was actually a wording in part of the video where what the creativity that can come out of an SPAG curriculum or an SPAG class in relation to the art and crafts aspect of it is that it is subhuman, and that just nobody actually commented. We went very quiet. And you said the room went very quiet. How many teachers were on this? There was 34 teachers on it, and we were just stunned. We were absolutely stunned. Now, some of the art teachers spoke up, and they talked about how they could actually use the art and crafts to actually guide children towards their CBAs, their classroom-based assessments. But this, what we were shown, it was serious stuff. Serious stuff. And did you, Mary, or any of your peer teachers flag any concerns?
I couldn't comment on this. And normally I was quite good to flag things and put my hand up and talk about it and raise an issue. But I was actually I was so sickened, and I couldn't respond. I said, I'm not speaking here because I could feel the coldness in the room. I could even feel the evil in the room. I just want to get out of there. And I know I discussed it with another teacher afterwards, and actually 2 other teachers, and we just all felt the same, that it was, whoa, this is way out of order. Yeah. Well, this is why Trump was a really good development. I didn't really believe he was going to do everything he said he was going to do, but, towards the end, he was talking a mean game. I mean, I started to definitely develop like hope-gnosis, myself. So then when he started pushing through these executive orders, I was like, wow, it's like Christmas.
Yeah, it's incredible what he's done, all the stuff he's put through so far. He is still surrounded by technocrats. I've seen him up there with Zuckerberg. Elon Musk is another one. Peter Thiel, he's of the PayPal mafia, is what Whitney Webb calls him. And he's deep into that stuff.
It's great, yeah. She's got her finger on the pulse, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely enjoy reading her stuff. What do you consider the next steps in the fight against what you call the techno-medical complex?
We have to get children off of and away from porn, and they have to be their time on technology has to be mediated so much more than it is, and they have to be gotten into the real world. Just like for us, we have to, cure our own addiction first before we can cure that of the children. But we have to cure our addiction to technology because it's killing us. Literally, it's killing us like any addict. There's no balance there. It's just, it's taking over our lives, and it's taking over the biosphere. You have to get out into the biosphere to remember that you're part of it, so you have to get out into the real world and build community where you live. You have to build community where you live because people, aren't necessarily attached to their families anymore because they didn't grow with them. They leave home early and then they don't go back except for Christmas where they throw up their lives on each other and, and then go back to their other life. And they call that a relationship. It's not a relationship. Relationship is knowing what people had for breakfast this morning that you love and hearing their stories and remembering them because you've heard them over and over again. Yeah. And who their people are. You meet their people too. My friends don't even know each other. This has been going on for years. Yeah. Most of them don't even know each other. They might know of each other, but they don't know each other. So everything is compartmentalized and isolated.
Yeah.
So we have to.
People are becoming very atomized and almost lonely, like but not people that you might expect that to tend to be older, that kind of thing, that have maybe their friends have died because of they're quite an advanced stage. These are young people, and especially the younger generation. Yeah, those guys, they seem to have a lot of mental health issues. They're absolutely riddled. I mean, my generation is millennial generation, which is quite bad, but Gen Z definitely seem to be up there with complete
How could they
mental
not
health
be?
problems. Yeah.
In this environment, and COVID just really, the lockdowns and stuff just really exacerbated all of that. It's terrible. It's terrible what's happening to children.
What were your thoughts on COVID? A genuine virus or bioweapon or?
I don't really know. I don't really like to speak into things that I'm not absolutely sure about. The whole thing. I mean, the minute I heard about the lockdowns, I was like, viscerally, I just felt like, oh, this is such bullshit. You know what I mean? Like my body was just screaming, this is bullshit. Like all my alarms going off. And I was like, wow. So yeah, I tend to, have a lot of, at this stage of my life, I trust the knowledge of my body more than I do that of my mind. Like my body, knows things before I do, in here. So it certainly was weaponized, whether it was, a lab leak or a bioweapon or whatever the hell it was, it certainly has been weaponized against the population. That's undeniable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are there any movements, organizations, or individuals you recommend people should follow?
Oh my God. The list would be tremendous. And it's so, it's so big. It's just, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I mean, follow me on social media and follow who I follow because, I follow the people that are, doing the work. And yeah, that's all I can say. There's too many to even think about, starting somewhere and ending somewhere.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to leave our watchers with?
Cure your addiction to technology, whatever it takes, because that's the beginning. That's once you cure your addiction, then you can progress from there and work to your strength. Try to do everything. Try to do something. Because this is a beast that won't be taken down by, one great action or some big movement or one incredible analysis. It's everybody working together and you have to do your part. I'd be in my work would be just in Siberia, if it wasn't for followers, just sharing it, because of the shadow ban. And because of the censorship on other platforms.
Yeah, the censorship is something else. Right, Jennifer, I'll leave that with you. I'll wish you good luck in the information war that we're currently in. The 11thhourblog.com and Jennifer Bilek. Feel free to get her book. It's an excellent read. Thank you very much.
Thank you.